This portion of the news brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
The union representing BTC line staff claiming that management is still dragging its feet with regards to a new industrial agreement. And once again, the group is calling on the government to intervene. Today, the union called its members to an emergency meeting at the Union Hall, threatening to turn up the heat. Siaska Adderley was there.
Their industrial agreement expired March 2014, and still there's been no conclusion to the matter. Negotiations between executives of the Bahamas Communications and Public Officers Union and the management of the Bahamas Telecommunications Company reportedly didn't begin until January of this year. Saying the union is fed up with the delayed process, BCPOU's Secretary General Dino Roll says they feel they have to take matters into their own hands. On Friday, union leaders met with members to give them an update.
Our members are prepared to do anything, any and everything within the confines of the law. And the BCPOU will do likewise.
Noting the union has standing meetings with BTC officials Tuesdays and Thursdays, Roll claims that yesterday's meeting was canceled without any advance notice. At the end of the day, he says the union is only seeking a 3-year industrial agreement that would give BTC employees a fair compensation package and ensure job security. Anything longer than that would not be good for the employer or the worker.
I call on Prime Minister Perry Christie. I call on our former colleagues, one who sit in the Ministry of Labor, one D. Shane Gibson. I call on my former colleague, the Director of Labor, to make sure that BTC and Mr. Leon Williams does what is in the best interest of the employees of BTC.
BCPOU executives say they will remain relentless in their pursuit until BTC's management comes back to the bargaining table. Siaska Adderley, ZNS Network News.
Early morning traffic was temporarily diverted here in New Providence as a group of nurses paraded throughout the streets of the capital. Carla Palmer was there.
For the nurses, it was a continuation of celebrations of Nurses Month. The march through the streets was more than just a show of solidarity.
I am proud to be a nurse in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Community Clinics Administrator Nurse Charlene Bain speaking on behalf of the 2,500 nurses nationwide. She says the march was also meant to bring awareness to the profession and highlight their important role.
The nursing profession in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas has been the cornerstone and the wings beneath the wings of the Ministry of Health in the provision of safe, high-quality care to all residents in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
According to Nurse Bain, there are currently 8 main family island districts being managed by nurses. This, she says, speaks to their proficiency and training.
When you look at the quality of nurses being produced, we have one of the most dynamic curriculum that allows for the nurse to operate in an expanded role. This team, cost-effective, cost-efficient, speaks to the fact that at a time in the world where shortage of doctors and nurses are a global threat to healthcare delivery, the role of the nurse and the cost it would take to train nurses to bring the quality of care is being considered worldwide.
Nursing officials say they want the public to know that nurses are a force for change. Their only request is for the public's continued support.
The public can really assist, and I'm going to talk from Family Island. When we send nurses to the Family Island, they're young, they have left their families and their loved ones. And so when a nurse comes to you in your Family Island district, I want the public to really be the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, and the friend to the nurses in the Family Island.
An awards ceremony on the 29th of this month will climax activities. Carla Palmer, ZNS Network News.
This portion of the news was brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
This is your Royal Fidelity Business News. I'm Sieska Adderley. Ultra Petrol Bahamas Limited released its earnings data yesterday, which revealed the company had a revenue of $84.6 million for the quarter, compared to the consensus estimate of $75.3 million. Shares of the Ultra Petrol traded up 1.69%. The stock had a trading value of 43,576 shares. In other business news, the Ministry of Financial Services has released draft copies of the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act legislation and the guidance notes to meet the international tax compliance requirements of the Model 1 FATCA intergovernmental agreement between the Bahamas and the United States. The new FATCA bill was drafted in order to give powers to the competent authority who will be responsible for reporting to the U.S. government and to facilitate the automatic exchange of information process under the FATCA IGA. The guidance notes have been drafted by Ernst & Young following consultation with representatives from the financial services industry, including the Ministry of Financial Services, the Ministry of Finance, and the private sector FATCA working group. The Bahamas signed the Model 1 IGA with the U.S. last November. And in international news, the Russian economy has contracted in the first 3 months of 2015 because of low oil prices, weaker spending, and sanctions from the West. It shrank by 1.9% between January and March compared to the previous year. That compares to the annual growth of 0.4% in the previous quarter. President Vladimir Putin has said the government expects Russia's economy to start growing again next year. This has been your Royal Fidelity Business News. I'm Sieska Adderley.
Key players of Stellar Energy Limited say they are pleased to see the government is serious about energy reform in the country and is taking huge steps forward in this regard. Chief Operating Officer at Stellar, J.P. Mickelson, says the company is encouraged with the recent developments which have taken place at BEC recently, with the appointment of Power Secure as the new management partner for the corporation.
We at Stellar Energy, we've been following the energy reform and all the work that's been put in by government over the last 24 months in making some of this happen. We know that this is a long process because, as everyone knows, we can't afford any mistakes with our energy providers as well as the generation of that power. We know that quite a few things have changed at the landfill as well. We have Renew Bahamas that have been doing a great job in recycling and then actually managing the landfill. And I think together with Power Secure's announcement, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to do what we would like to do, which means build a plasma gasification waste-to-energy plant which will further remediate whatever's sitting at the landfill right now, because we would use all the trash that is sitting there.
Mickelson says since Stellar Energy has been here in the country over the past 3 years working on their waste-to-energy plans at the Harold Road landfill, the company has already invested some $2 million. Having now completed stage 1 of their plan, he says they are ready to proceed to the next phase.
We are waiting now to go to FEL 2 and FEL 3. With FEL 2 and FEL 3 comes a large hiring of Bahamian talent that we know is here, are ready to roll, just like we are, and not just here locally, but also our investors, because we do have about $650 million of investor money lined up to fully underwrite this venture.
Lots of action taking place down there in Red Bay's Andros. Our Julian Gibson is already on the ground and he tells us about a special ceremony that took place earlier today.
The historic community of Red Bay's Andros gathered today for a very special tribute to the original settlers, the Black Seminole Indians from Florida. The tribute was a long-held dream of historian the late B.A. Newton that was brought to life by the local government district of North Andros, Luzon Township, and artist Stanley Forbes. Reverend Dr. John E. Newton shared the rich history of Red Bay's.
The Newtons of Red Bay's, Moses Newton, was among the first group of brave men and women who escaped from Florida to reach Andros Island. In 1821, they started building homes and digging wells for fresh water. They call their new settlement Red Base. They stayed to themselves, hidden away from others on the island as much as possible because they were afraid of being recaptured and sent back to the United States to become slaves once again.
It's this rich history and connections that Ministry of Tourism Officer Peter Douglas says will set Red Base apart as a tourism destination.
I want us to be able to do all the beading, all the weaving, all the clothing design, and have the Seminole Indian culture down pat. So when we come here, we not only see it, but we feel it and we can live it. This could be an entire tourism attraction.
District Education Officer and former principal of Red Base Primary School, Michelle Boleg, felt that children of Red Base should know the history of their ancestors.
Do not be the one who can only say that I came from Florida. There is a more in-depth study of your history, and you ought to learn it. I challenge all of you to know your history, and that is why you would have an appreciation of how far you've actually come.
Keynote speaker at the unveiling was Administrator Ivan Ferguson. Well, he summed it up this way.
I believe that the patriarch and the historian, Reverend Dr. B.A. Newton, who always had a keen interest in the history and the story of Red Base, is dancing today. We are all dancing with Reverend Dr. B.A. Newton.
So the next time you visit Red Base North Andros, you'll meet this young fella right in the back of me, this Black Seminole Indian. Reporting for ZNS News in Red Base North Andros, I am Julian Gibson.